Hey, good evening. This is Jacob Stidham, and I'm going to walk you through my lesson for the OER video lesson that we did last week. So the approach I decided to take with this was to just kind of walk through how I would kind of introduce it to my kids, including all the details and all that different stuff, because at least that makes more sense to me doing it. At least when I was reading the directions. I do apologize for the raspy voice. I've been sick the last week, so that may be why it sounds a little bit weird. But I'll try my best to get through this. So the very first thing I would start off with, no matter what, is the objectives and the criteria for success. I kind of foresee this being about 2 or 3 days, which is why I have about 2 or 3 days up here. But essentially, the objectives are the same as with the lesson plan from last week. So students will be able to identify key Enlightenment philosophers during the Enlightenment movement. And then students will be able to analyze different philosophers in order to complete the digital Jigsaw activity. And then finally, students will be able to create an Animoto video in order to show mastery of Enlightenment philosophies. And then criteria for success. I know not everybody does these, but my county is pretty big on them, and it's pretty much just like a general agenda of what they're going to do. So pretty much they're going to do a background on the Enlightenment, complete the Enlightenment Jigsaw activity, and then create a video constitution on Animoto. So here we go. So today students will be learning about the Enlightenment. We'll be doing background and some activities with it in order for students to really get a good grasp of what the Enlightenment is. So, first off is, what exactly is the Enlightenment? And this is kind of important since students need to understand what exactly this movement is before we actually look at some Enlightenment philosophers. So, it has appeared in Europe from the 17th to early 19th centuries. It kind of follows on the tailcoat of the scientific revolution because prior to these series of revolutions, you have the Renaissance, you have the scientific revolution, you have the Enlightenment. Prior to all these different things, logic and reason weren't really prevalent in Europe during this time period. So these movements really kind of establish a more logic-based approach to everything. And so the scientific revolution established the concept that the world is built on rules and logic. For example, gravity, what goes up has to come down, so on and so forth. So a lot of these philosophers, they began to kind of wonder, if the world's built on these well-established rules and logic, why can't humans and nature run the same way? So these philosophers really try to delve into human nature, into how humans work, how nature works in general. And this kind of delves into concepts such as how governments function, the true nature of people and nature, and the development of basic human rights and needs. So that's really what the Enlightenment is all about. The main philosophers that we're going to be looking at this week, or these next couple days, is right here before you. There are a lot more, but for what we're going to be looking at, we're just going to be focusing on these 4 philosophers, mostly. So first off, you have John Locke. He's considered not only one of the first philosophers, but one of the most dominant ones, since his ideas really do play a role in the creations of new governments. For example, our own government is created from John Locke and his ideas. And our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution pull a lot of ideas and direct quotes from him. You also have Baron de Montesquieu. He comes a little bit later than Locke, 1689 to 1755. Montesquieu plays a very important role, especially when it comes to how governments are essentially divided, and you guys will kind of see that later on. You also have Jean-Jacques Rousseau. He was born in 1712 and died in 1778. He's a very interesting one with a very interesting ideas and a very interesting life in general. Some of his ideas were a little too far-fetched, but his concepts when it comes to government really do hold true, especially to current times. And then you have Voltaire, 1694 to 1778. And he really does help provide a lot of the general rights that you're going to look at throughout the next few days. So these are important philosophers that we're going to be focusing on going forward. And then at this point, I would kind of give them this video. This is from Crash Course. I know Crash Course can be a hit or miss depending on the teacher, but he's been making some really good ones recently about European history. And this Enlightenment video is really good and really kind of just delving into the background as a whole. So overall, this would help students a lot with that.
Hi, I'm John Green, and this is Crash.
Obviously, I'm not going to play it because it's long, but yeah. So, actually, that brings us to Activity 1. So, for this first activity, students are going to be broken into groups of 4. In my classroom, I have pods of 4. So each pod has 4 desks in it. So theoretically, students would already be in groups of 4. What I would just be doing is assigning each group member a number, 1 through 4. And then depending on what number that student had, they would correspond with a certain philosopher. So for example, if you had number 1, you would be with John Locke. 2 would be Montesquieu, 3 would be Rousseau, and then 4 would be Voltaire. So, on the handout, each student will need to fill out their section about their philosopher. Just their philosopher. Because that's the part of the jigsaw. The sections on the handout that they need to fill out will be the year, or years, main concepts of that philosopher, and then how their concepts are used today. And I'm going to very heavily emphasize that part because they're going to really need that for the assessment, for the performance-based assessment piece of this. Once everyone is done, the group will share with each other in order to complete the handouts. And then please be detailed. You will need this information for the assessment piece. So you will have about 30 minutes in order to do this. So in my mindset, the background would take about a third to half the class, and then they would have the rest of the class to do the jigsaw and finish this up. So, this is just a little bit of a reminder. So, you will need all 4 to do tomorrow's activity. That last section, how do their ideas apply today, will be very helpful later. I'm also going to emphasize that I'll be rotating, so please ask if you are stuck or have questions. I'm a walker, so whenever students are working, I'm constantly walking around the room rotating, just kind of looking at what they're doing, maybe throwing out hints or help here or there, and then obviously asking questions, answering questions. Pardon me. And then make sure your group has time to share with each other. I find that a lot of times with jigsaws, students kind of overlooked how long it takes to share with each other properly, because I don't want them just copying off of each other's papers, but actually like having a conversation and explaining it to each other. That way, they're kind of not only do the other students learn, but it also shows that you yourself know what you're talking about. So I'm kind of saying up to this point, taking up the entire first day. I might use part of the second day to wrap this up, but overall, this is where like day 1 should kind of fall. Now, depending on the class or how fast the class is going, activity 2 will take 1 or 2 class periods. So activity 2 is the performance-based assessment. That is the Enlightenment video activity. So either individually or with a partner, students will create a video constitution based on the philosophies of the Enlightenment. Imagine that you are on the cusp of creating a new country. You have broken away from your old corrupt king, and you and your people are ready to move on. Before you can form your own country, you must first create a new constitution. This constitution must be a democratic country that focuses on the concepts of the Enlightenment you have learned about. And you will accomplish this by using the video maker Animoto. So they'll be creating a virtual video-based constitution, which I'll show in a second. So as a class, I'll show this video. It pretty much explains how to use Animoto, because not every student is going to have done Animoto. I'm also going to leave this on Canvas, our learning management system that we use in the county, so that students can look back on it if they need to. And then obviously I'm not going to play the whole thing, but... Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sally, Animoto's Chief Video Officer.
So project requirements, you will need to comply with the following in order to receive full credit. You must use Animoto to create a constitution. The constitution must be based on the philosophies of the 4 philosophers we looked at from the Enlightenment. So again, they have to use all 4 of these guys. And they also have to which is why the Jigsaw is so important for them to do well on, because that's where they're going to get all their information from. The Constitution must contain the following parts, and there's 3 parts: the structure of the government, transaction of power, and then basic bill of rights. And then for each part, students will need to put the name of the philosopher for each part their concepts were used for. So these are my basic requirements, and I put the link to my example. It wouldn't let me embed it onto the slides, so I just had to do the link to my Animoto, and that will just kind of show, my exemplar. So students will be able to look at it again too, but that is essentially how I'd kind of go about this lesson for the lesson plan that we did last week. So thank you for watching and putting up with my raspy voice. It's not easy being sick, but hopefully it's good enough. So thank you again, and hopefully you join me next time.